This was nicknamed the Schumer shutdown on the right. That was the talking point. And I want you to hear Senator Bernie Sanders, sort of his take on how this could have been talked about.
If you do nothing, you sit back and you say it is going to be terrible. And that's right. A shutdown will be terrible. But our job is to put the onus on the Republican president, the Republican House, the Republican Senate, the people who control the government. They are responsible. They've acted in an undemocratic, unprecedented, unilateral way. They've given us an offer, take it or leave it.
Could that have been an alternative message?
It could possibly have been, but let's face it, we have seen shutdown politics play out in this city for decades. And whoever is perceived to be, in the eyes of the American people, the one who is perpetuating the shutdown often takes the blame. And I think that that's ultimately what Chuck Schumer was worried about here. For years, Democrats have made the opposite case, that they need to fund the government, and Republicans were on the defense.
You have to govern, was the argument.
Right.
Yeah,
and I think
Elliott, you're nodding?
I am, and having sort of lived through the 2013 shutdown the last time I was at the Justice Department, I think I take a different...
It was a heady time.
It was a heady...
Shutdowns,
simple
reporting
times.
on it nearly every year, basically.
I think the biggest problem Chuck Schumer has is that federal government HR policy isn't sexy, and I think folks don't realize what happens in the event of a government shutdown. Number one, those 3 million employees, many of whom would be put on hold, may not get their pay back at the end of this. Typically they have in the past, but do you think this Congress is going to pay government workers? Number two, they would have the power to designate some agencies as vital, some as not. And given what we've seen over the course of the last months, this could mean a gutting of the federal government by Donald Trump.
Let me talk about fallout from voters. We're going to talk about all this over the course of the hour, so I don't want to rush you guys. But here is a Vietnam vet, a North Carolina constituent, and just kind of following up on the conversation we're having right now.
I'm a registered Republican, and I'm showing up here because it really hurts me to see the VA under attack, people being fired. Generally speaking, this whole, the way they're so chaotic and firing all these people, you probably do know, a third of the federal workforce are veterans. It's wrong. It's just wrong.
Unexpected consequence of these DOGE cuts has been obviously the disproportionate hit on military veterans because they have preference in government hiring. So how do you talk about that?
They do. It's difficult. I mean, I've talked to Republican members of Congress, and they are concerned that they're going to face these types of criticisms at their town hall meetings, which is why I think some have just stopped doing town hall meetings. At the end of the day, it's very difficult to say no and to cut spending. This is why politicians in Washington for so years have resisted doing so, and why we have a $36 trillion debt.
He's not saying that no at all. He's like, the way this is happening isn't good. And I do hear that very consistently from the people who are trying to find some middle ground.
Yeah, and I think this is the difficulty Democrats are having right now. Their entire message around the shutdown and before the shutdown has been, it's really important to keep the government open. In other shutdown fights, it's been about another unrelated issue, but it's difficult to say, it's really important to keep government services open, so we're not going to be funding the government.
And I think the tricky thing also for Leader Schumer is the flip-flop. Up until 24 hours ago, they were quite clear that they were opposed to the Republican bill, and then all of a sudden the leader comes up. Now, either there's a big split in the party or they change their mind. And I think voters don't like seeing that either. So I don't think they really had a great option here, either on politics or policy, and they're just sort of stuck.
Yeah, and something I want to get your opinion on later. When we think back to those town halls, the Tea Party, that sparked a political movement that has given us lawmakers who are very powerful today. So what starts out as a constituent can end up your competitor.